Hello all, I'm Anders, and we're a month into the new year so far, and it's looking a lot like last year, which means we're probably all going to have a lot of hobby time on our hands. And like many people, I have a lot to work on, so what better time than now to take a moment and go over exactly what I have done and what I've yet to do. And so I decided I wanted to catalog my entire miniature collection and organize it all into one big living list. So first of all, I needed to decide what I wanted to get out of this, and for me, it was two main points. Number one, I wanted to know exactly what models I have. Seems obvious, but should help me to plan out projects and purchases going forward. Part two, though, is somewhat more interesting, as like all hobbyists, I have started and stopped numerous projects over the years, and bought tons of secondhand models in various states. So it would be super useful to understand just what condition it's all in. To do this, I defined 4 different states a miniature could be in: painted, incomplete, built, or unbuilt. Unbuilt is certainly the most obvious, as this is anything that still needs work to be done before any painting can be started. For instance, do I still need to cut it off the sprue? Have I glued the pieces together? Does it need to be based? And so on. Continuing on from that, next is built, which simply means nothing else needs to be done before painting can start. Now on to incomplete and painted, and this is where things get interesting, as a lot of my models may technically be painted, but not necessarily complete. A prime example of this is older models, as like a lot of people, I started this hobby back when I was pretty young, and do have some models that are still from that time, but they don't look all that great. I also have some models that I painted when I first got back into the hobby several years ago, and some of those don't look great either. So I decided to define painted as any model I would be happy to use in a game without any updates needed. This was kind of fun, as it led me to really consider and go over a lot of the old work I've done over the years, and what was worth keeping or not. For instance, I painted this Balrog when I was like 15. And while it's clearly not up to my current standards, I was really proud of the flame part back in the day, so I don't want to redo that. But the skin and base was pretty plain, so I went on with some washes and added some recessed shading to give it a boost, rimmed it in black, and now while it's still not what I think a Balrog I painted today would look like, I'd be happy to put this down on a table. Now that we have all that sorted out, the next important thing was to determine just how I wanted to build this list. I like using sketch and notebooks for things, as something about physically touching pen to paper is just so satisfying. But because I wanted this to be a living document, I decided that would end up being too difficult and complicated to continue updating over the years. Next, I know there's a lot of stuff that can be done on our phones. There's tons of different programs out there, and I could probably even use stuff like Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, but I wasn't really sure how I would make that work, and so I decided not to do that either. And that leads us to the computer, and there's just so much that could be done here. There are tons of programs out there specifically for organizing stuff, and while I've done a bit of programming myself, I'm not at the point of someone like Miscast Terrain where I can just write my own program to do what I need. And so I decided to fall back on an old standard: Excel. I actually quite like Excel, as I've used it a lot for both school and work, and while I'm not super knowledgeable about some of the fancier stuff, I always quite liked building equations in it, and so decided to go with that. Basically, I built a general spreadsheet organized by game system, model producer, as well as the status of all the models. This is then compiled for each army, game system, and finally, the entire collection. With this, I was then able to see exactly how many models I have and what proportion of my entire collection is painted. And with that all set up, the last thing to do is go through everything. So let's go. Starting off with the painted, let's get the random stuff out of the way first, with a couple of models you may recognize. The 3 from Westphalia Miniatures I painted up in my last video. Moving on, we have 3 Stormcasts from Warhammer Underworlds. I also have a Corn Boy painted from this same set, but can't find him right now. keeping with GW box sets, I also have a few Blitzbowl models painted. I quite like what I've played of Blitzbowl so far, and really need to get around to finishing off my 2 teams. Speaking of board games, we have our first Tolkien models, from Fantasy Flight's Journeys in Middle-earth. Fun fact, this is the only time you'll see a model that was not painted by me in this video, as my wife painted one of these. Can you guess which? Also, totally randomly, here's a Stormtrooper. This one Trooper Commander is still the only Star Wars model I've painted. Really need to get on that. And onto another Lonely Mini, here's a Lannister Guard from Simon's Song of Ice and Fire game. He was a test model from a while ago, and I've still never painted the rest of the army. But speaking of Song of Ice and Fire, I have painted up my Starks. Still haven't played it yet, but really enjoyed painting these up. Based the scheme on the Game of Thrones show, so lots of brown. And now, we're into MESBG, starting with the Balrog I talked about earlier. And keeping with the older minis, here's some dwarves. The Iron Hills came out right around when I was first getting back into the game, so they were really early in my second wave painting journey. Also, I painted up Thorin and Balin from the Goblin Town set to lead them, along with Dane. Pig's still not finished. And as for Goblin Town, I do have some of those painted up too. I've only got 18 finished so far, along with the King, and they're not in the best shape, but they are technically gameable. Then there's 3 of my favorite models, the 3 Hunters. I just love the characters and was super happy with these new sculpts. And to go along with them, I have some Ghosty Boys, along with their King and some Heralds. That Legendary Legion is just too good. Then we get to one of my favorite armies, Gondor. These guys in particular have gone through a fair few paint variations for me. So my current force isn't actually really big, but I do love them, and really want to spend some more time working on them. And last but not least for good, we have Rohan. While I do love how they look all together, I really dislike painting the troops for these guys. Which is funny, as I adore the heroes. The new Rohan plastics in particular are some of my favorite sculpts, and I can't wait to get some more heroes to go with them. And now, on to evil. Starting with probably the army you're all the most familiar with, Angmar. These guys are still very much in progress, and I can't wait to keep adding more to them. Then there's another army you have seen, Dol Guldur. The Hunter Orc sculpts are some of my absolute favorites from the Hobbit range. as I just love painting and playing with them. I also have some Azog's Legion that I converted up ages ago to ally with these guys, but they are looking pretty rough right now, so don't have any shots of them. Then there's the big boys, Isengard. The paint job on these is really simple, but they look great altogether. I'm pretty happy with the army as it is, and just need to get some more heroes and siege weapons to finish it all up. Then finally, there's my absolute favorite army, Mordor. I just love these guys so much, and have had so much fun over the years painting and converting them. I have loads of plans for more trolls, orcs, and one day, maybe some great beasts. But for now, they're 100% my go-to evil army, and I just adore running them in tournaments. Also, I did count up my terrain for this, a lot of which is packed away. But I just love terrain so much and can't stop building it despite how little space I have. And with that, we have a total of 586 painted models, which honestly, both feels like a lot, and not much at all, especially considering 284 of those were painted just last year. But I have no shortage of new projects, and on that note, let's get to the scarier stuff. All the rest. Call it a pile of shame, opportunity, or whatever. We all have it, and here's mine. To start off, I went in hard on the Song of Ice and Fire Kickstarter. And other than the Starks, the rest is still all unpainted and in boxes. I've only picked up 2 more packs over the years, so there's still a lot here. Next, let's get into the bulk of it, Lord of the Rings. And in this box, we have all my sprues. Knights, orcs, warriors, heroes, lots and lots of stuff to go. And then there's the rest of it. I have tons of blisters and boxes from various made-to-orders and impulse buys over the years. I do have plans for a lot of these, but it's gonna take some time. And those aren't the only big boxes. This may say Lord of the Rings on it, but that's actually a lie, as it's my Super Bits box. It's got some Perry minis and historical stuff, a couple of boxes of non-GW orcs, skulls, and a bunch of random GW bits, which we'll see some more of later. Next is the rest of the loose stuff. Now, a lot of these are either semi-built / painted by me or other people in random lots I've bought, but all of it needs to get done. Elves, men, Nazgul, a dragon, you name it, and it's probably there. So many potential projects. And there's even more here. But hopefully some of those will get done sooner rather than later. And finally, the last of my loose ones. These are mostly junky, older, broken plastics that I mostly use for conversion fodder, but they're still models. And speaking of models, how about some non-Lord of the Rings GW stuff, as I've bought several things over the years for various different projects. In particular, I've got some Bretonnians I'd love to do up someday, but who knows when that will be. Maybe when the old world comes back. And continuing on the GW train, here's the rest of those box sets. As well as a little 40K. Got this a while ago, as I really wanted to give Kill Team a try, and I'm sure I will eventually. And then, there's the rest of my Stormtroopers. These have been sitting built for over a year now, and I just need to bite the bullet and paint them already. But not this day. Finally, we have some real random stuff. Mainly, there's the other minis I got from Westphalia, but also some historicals I bought from my last couple of vacations. And with that, we have 871 unfinished models, leaving us with a total collection count of 1,457 models, which feels like a lot. Looking at the stats then, I calculated that I currently have 40.22% of my miniature collection painted, which actually doesn't feel that bad. I think a good goal for the year now is going to be to push that to a solid 50, as that seems like it would be a whole lot healthier. Unsurprisingly, a big portion of these models is Middle-earth, which stands at 1,006 total figures, with 478 painted. It's funny that while that is a big number, I still don't feel like I have that many functional armies. So I think another project for this year will be to really plan out what each army needs to get that fully playable level. And with that, we're all done. It's kind of refreshing to have some solid numbers regarding where my collection is at. Well, until I think about how much I spent on all of it, then I just get really sad. But for now, I want to give a big shout out to my new Patreon founders, Vincent and Nikos. And for the rest of you all, thank you again for everything, and let me know what your collections are looking like right now. Bigger, smaller, more painted, less painted? All awesome to hear, so put it in the comments so we can all share the shame. And with that, I'm Anders, and have a good one.
I mean, it's horrible, and it goes all the way back to here, but it's not as bad as I thought. Oh, yeah.